In this video, we're going to discuss about maxima and minima, particularly the critical numbers, the first derivative test, and second derivative test. Okay. First, let us talk about the critical numbers. Okay, so what do you mean by critical numbers? Critical values. So, critical numbers are values of x, let's say c, such that uh, f prime of c equals 0 or f prime of c does not exist. Okay, so what does this mean? This means that any value of x from the domain of the function that makes the first derivative equal to 0 or does not exist is called critical numbers. Okay, so let's have an example. So if we have the function y equals x cubed plus 3x squared minus 2. Okay? How are we going to find the critical number or numbers for this one? So what we're going to do here is first, we get the first derivative or the derivative. So y prime equals, so the derivative of x cubed is 3x squared and the derivative of 3x squared is 6x, then minus 2, so that is 0. After that, we equate the derivative to 0. So 3x squared plus 6x equals 0. Then we can now have the value of x by solving this equation. So by factoring, we have 3x, 3x squared divided 3x, that is x, 6x divided 3x, that is positive 2, equals 0. Solving for x, so we have 3x equals 0 and x plus 2 equals 0. So divide both sides by 3, cancel, x equals 0. Then for this one, transpose positive 2, so negative. Okay, so there are two critical numbers. Okay, we have 0 and negative 2. Now, this means that 0 and negative 2 make the first derivative or the derivative of the function equal to 0. So, but if the problem is asking for the critical point, okay, for the critical points, what we are going to do here is just substitute this excess to the original function. So, when x equals 0, so ang y natin is just 0 cube plus 3 times 0 squared minus 2. And that is equal to negative 2. Then, when x is equal to negative 2, our y is equal to negative 2 cube plus 3 times negative 2 squared minus 2. That is negative 8. Negative 2 squared is 4 times 3, that is 12 minus, and that is negative 8 plus 12 is 4 minus 2, that is 2. So therefore, the critical points are 0, negative 2, and negative 2, positive 2. Okay? Now, what if we are asked find or to determine whether these points is a relative maximum or relative minimum? When we say relative minimum, that the point that is lower than its neighboring point, and kapag naman relative maximum, point that is higher than its neighboring point. Okay? Let us recall here that if we have this graph, kunwari, okay, So, yan, scrap. So, this point is a relative maximum. Relative maximum. And this point here is a relative uh, minimum point. Okay? So, how are we going to determine whether these points are relative maximum or relative minimum? So, what we are going to use is the first derivative test. Okay? So, we use the first derivative test. Okay, what does this mean? This test mean. So, let's say we have, let's say we have critical number C. So, when y prime in the yung derivative changes from negative to positive. So what does negative to positive meaning? We have to choose values, one from the left of C and another one from the right of C. So if y prime changes from negative to positive, then uh, we have a relative minimum. Okay, but when y prime changes from positive to negative, so we have a relative maximum. But when y prime does not change sign, ibig sabihin that point at that value of c, at that value of x equals c is neither relative minimum nor relative maximum. Okay? So let's try to look again at our uh, example. So this is the example presented earlier. The function is y equals x cubed plus 3x squared minus 2. And we have the critical points. There are two critical points. Uh, negative and 0 negative. Again, so we get the derivative again. So that is 3x squared plus 6x. So we check that there are two critical numbers. You have negative 0. So at x equals 0, just choose numbers, one from the left and the right. 0. Let's say negative 1. And we have positive. Then substitute this to the first derivative. So this is y prime, the first derivative, 3x squared plus 6x. So if x is negative 1, negative 1 squared is 1 times 3 is 3 plus 6 times negative 1. So 3 minus 6, that is negative, right? Then if it is 1, 3 times 1 squared is 3 plus 6 times 6. So 3 plus 6, positive 9. So positive. As you can see, the sign changes from negative positive. Therefore, 0 negative is a relative minimum. Okay? So at x equals negative 2, we can choose uh, x equals negative 3 and x equals negative 1. So for negative 1, we have negative, then is negative 3. So negative 3 squared is 9 times 3, 27 minus 18 positive. From, so yan, from positive to negative, therefore, a maximum. So therefore, this negative 2 is a relative maximum. What does this mean? Ibig sabihin kung yung negative 2 is higher compared to the points nearest to it. So, yung 0 negative 2 since relative minimum siya, lower siya compared to the other points nearest to it. Okay? So, ganun lang siya. Ganun lang kumuha ng relative maximum and relative minimum. Okay? Let's have another example. Let's say we have this one. So we have you have a function y equals 3x to the 4 minus 8x cubed plus 6x squared. Okay, we have to find the relative maximum and relative minimum of this function. X to the 4th minus 8x cubed plus 6x squared. Now what we are going to do here first is just get the derivative. Y prime is equal to 3 times 4, 12x minus 8 times 3, 24x squared plus 12x. Then set this equal to 0. So 12x cubed minus 24x squared plus 12x equals 0. So we can divide all of this by 12. Simplify, we have x cubed minus x squared plus x equals 0. Then we can factor out x. So x cubed divided x is x squared. 2x squared divided x is 2x. X divided x is positive equals 0. Then this can be factored as x minus 1 times x minus 1. X minus 1 is plus x times x squared negative x plus negative x. The negative 1 times negative 1 positive. So there are three critical numbers. X equals 0, or rather 2 since minus 1 double value. So x equals 1. So x equals 0 and x equals 1 are the critical numbers. So we find the critical points. So when x equals 0, it's very obvious. So this is 3 times 0 to the 4 minus 8x 0 cube, 6 times 0 squared. We have 1 critical point 0, 0. So when x is equal to 1, simply 1 to the 4th. So we can consider x to the 4th, x cubed, and x squared is 1, right? So 3 minus 8, negative 5, plus 6, positive. And 3 minus 8 is negative 5 plus 6, positive. So another critical point is 1, 1. Then we have to test whether this 0, 0 is a relative minimum or relative maximum, as well as for 1. Okay, using our first derivative test. Okay, let's say the first critical number, x equals 0. So we can consider x equals negative 1 and x equals 2. By taking note, guys, that since 1 is also a critical number, we do not uh, have to use this as test point, right? Because it's already a critical number. So we use instead of using fraction. So x negative 1 and x equal to 2, then we substitute this to the first derivative. So our first derivative is here, 12x cubed minus 24x squared plus 12x. So we replace x by negative 1. That's here, negative 1 cubed is negative 1 times 12 is 12 times negative 1, negative 12. Negative 12 minus 24 is negative 1 is positive 1. Negative 12 minus 24 is negative 36 minus 12 is still negative. Okay? About for 2. 2 cubed is 8 times 12. So 12 times 8 16, carry 1, 96, then minus 2 squared, 4. 24 times 4, 16, carry 1, 8, 96. So then plus 12 times 20. As you can see, we have positive 20. So therefore, this is positive. So since the sign changes from negative to positive, you can say that 0, 0 here is a relative minimum. Okay? How about one? So we have can choose, let's say x is equal to negative, then x equals, I again, sorry, the left one can choose negative. So, wait, we need to choose, ano, rather, sorry. We need to choose a number nearer to that one. X equals to 1. Ano ba? Nasa left 1. So, x equals, say, 1.5. Okay? 1.5 rather. So, 1 half or 0.5. Then it ends down. Okay? X equal to 2 is positive, right? How about yung 1 half? So, 1 half cube is 1/8. So, 12 times 1/8, then minus 24. 1 half squared, 1/4, plus 12 times 1 half. So, 12 over 8 by 4 is 3 over minus 6 plus 6 cancel. So, positive. As you can see, the sign does not change, right? So, positive, positive. Therefore, at x equals 1, the 0.11 here is not a relative minimum or a relative maximum. Sa graph na to, meron lang tayong relative minimum. So, ito yung graph na, ito yung point na 0, 0. This is only the max minimum point. Okay? So, also, we have another test that we can use. That test is called the second derivative. Okay, so second derivative. So, simple lang naman yung second derivative test. We have still consider the critical number C. So, we need to find the second derivative. So, y double prime, or we say f double prime, we replace x by c, and the result is less than 0. Therefore, that is a relative maximum. Okay? Relative maximum. Pero naman, greater than 0 naman, that's a relative minimum. Ano kung equal to 0 siya? Hindi siya relative maximum. Hindi rin siya relative. So, balikan natin yung example natin kanina ulit na y equals x cubed plus 3x squared minus 2. We get the second derivative. So, y prime, that is 3x squared plus 6x. Then, y double prime, derivative of 3x squared, 6x plus 6. Then, yan. So, y double prime is equal to 6x plus 6. We just substitute a critical number. So, We know that there are two critical numbers earlier that uh, they are zero. So x equals zero. Okay, x equals zero. So s of second prime of zero. That is 6 times 0 plus 6. That is 6 greater than 0, right? So meaning at x equals 0, relative minimum. And we are correct here. Babalikan natin. So first example, at x equals 0, we have a relative. So dapat less than 0 sa negative. So we have a relative maximum. At x equals negative, other so I don't prime negative. So 6 times negative plus 6, and that is negative 12 plus 6, 6 is less than 0, minimum. Okay, so we are correct here. Okay, if we have another one, first example, we use this space. So this is our first derivative, right? 12x cubed minus 24x squared plus 2x. Check for the second. So the double prime is just 12 times 3, 36 x squared, then 48x here plus there are two critical numbers. So 0, let's say 0. We check, here we find it out as that is a relative minimum. So dapat greater than 0. So, see. So 36 times 0 squared minus 48, 0 plus, so this are already 0, so 12, which is greater than 0. So therefore, relative siya. So we are correct here. Let's see, let's test for 1. Found here that 1 is not maximum norm. Check. So y double prime, dapat equal to 0 ang sagot para hindi siya maging greater than less than 2. Check. So it's 36 times 1 squared is 48 times 1 plus 12. So 36 times 1 squared is 36. 48 times 1 is 48 plus 36 minus 48 is negative 12 plus 12, 0. So 0 siya. That is why 1 at x equals 1, critical number, 0.11 natin, relative, hindi rin siya relative maximum. Call it as a point of inflection. So point of inflection is a point wherein the graph changes its concavity. Kita ko lang. Let's say we have a graph of pare. So, yan. This point, see this is point 1. This is a point of inflection. Point of inflection is a point wherein the second derivative, wherein value the x coordinate makes second derivative of the function equal to 0. Dito nag-change yung concavity. As you can see, that is from here up to this point, it's concave downward, then becomes concave up. So nag-change yung concavity. So, ang tawag sa point na yun, point of inflection. Okay? Let's